Tonight on Politicat, Florida rejected a proposed AP African American Studies course.
And the U.S. levied heavy sanctions against Iran last week for, quote, human rights violations.
And finally, an investigation into the U.S. Supreme Court leak last summer. We'll tell you exactly what they found. Those stories and more tonight on Politicat.
It's your politics
right now.
Hello, I'm Shravya Pant.
And I'm Jonas Blum. Yesterday, the White House announced they intend to end the COVID-19 national and public health emergencies on May 11th. This announcement is in opposition to two resolutions being brought to the floor this week by House Republicans, because they wanted the emergencies to end immediately. House Democrats were worried about voting against the legislation without a clear plan from the Biden administration. The White House will be extending the COVID-19 emergencies so healthcare providers can have a smoother transition.
Yesterday, 3 paramedics who responded to the deadly beating of Tyree Nichols were terminated. The Memphis Fire Department said they had, quote, violated numerous MFD policies. This news comes after the Memphis Police Department announced that a 6th officer, Preston Hemphill, was relieved of duty. A 7th officer was also relieved from duty, but they are yet to be named. The remaining 5 officers involved were fired on January 20th and charged with murder.
This week, U.S. and Dutch officials agreed to block chip exports to China in an effort to bar China from becoming a tech superpower. The deal stops sales from the Dutch giant ASML, which is one of the few companies capable of producing printers needed for high-end semiconductors. These semiconductors are a large part of the U.S.-China tech war. This deal comes after months of the U.S. pursuing Dutch support against China. The ASML CEO said it would take, quote, months to decide whether the details of the agreement. Japan was also a part of these negotiations. They indicated they would work with the U.S. against China.
Earlier this month, the Florida Department of Education rejected the proposed AP African American Studies course on January 23rd. Politicat's Kendall Wright has more.
Thanks, Shravya. This is not the first decision of its kind in the state of Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis passed the Parental Rights in Education bill, known by critics as Don't Say Gay bill, last March, which restricts discussions around gender and sexual orientation in schools. In a speech on January 23rd, Ron DeSantis says some topics studied promote liberal political agendas.
Stuff about intersectionality, abolishing prisons, that's a political agenda.
DeSantis also says the curriculum teaches critical race theory, which examines the relationship between race and a country's legal institutions. Critical race theory is taught in law schools and not in secondary education.
We want education, not indoctrination.
Many African Americans in higher education say this rejection is a lost opportunity for students to learn about a history that is often excluded from traditional curriculums.
Exactly. They don't want students to know the truth about this country. It's necessary to know those horrors, to learn from them, to turn away from them, to build institutions that reject those horrors.
Civil rights attorney Ben Crump will sue Governor DeSantis if he doesn't negotiate with the College Board.
In America, you have a right to have your culture, your history respected.
Black leaders are planning a march around Florida's Capitol building next month. I'm Kendall Wright, Politicat.
Thanks, Kendall. The College Board announced that a revised version of the course will be released on February 1st, the first day of Black History Month.
Now we take you to Capitol Hill to get the latest updates about the Fair Tax Act, as well as what Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene hopes to accomplish with her involvement on 2 House committees. Politicat's Brennan Leach and Logan Cisano have the story.
Thanks, guys. After a historic battle for leadership, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is working to find a balance between his plans and the promises he made to far-right members of his caucus. One of those promises was to bring the Fair Tax Act to a committee hearing. The Fair Tax proposal would eliminate the IRS and create a 30% sales tax on all spending. This would replace income, estate, and Social Security taxes. Democrats argue the bill would be detrimental to middle-class families who tend to spend a higher percentage of their income. Last week, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called the measure unfair, unconscionable, and un-American. McCarthy says he doesn't support the bill, but he's yet to go back on his guarantee to bring it to committee. Last week, Republican Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne told me that McCarthy is all for simplifying the tax code, but the Fair Tax Act might not be the vehicle to do it. Also on McCarthy's plate is the debt ceiling. The speaker is set to meet with President Biden tomorrow to discuss potentially raising the government's spending limit in order to avoid a debt default. This will be McCarthy's first trip to the White House since becoming speaker. And as the battle for power among House Republicans continues, Logan Schijano has more on how one GOP congresswoman is changing her game in recent weeks. Logan?
That's right, Brennan. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has been no stranger to the spotlight in her first 2 years in Congress. She's come under fire for several comments she's made before taking office, including suggesting that the Parkland school shooting was a false flag event and that worsening wildfires in California were due not to climate change, but due to space lasers engineered by the Rothschild banking firm. Now, it appears she has the unwavering support of House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Greene supported McCarthy on each vote during that marathon week, despite several of her far-right colleagues like Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz trying to cause problems and stop McCarthy. McCarthy returned the favor by placing Greene on two top committees, House Oversight and Homeland Security. So what is the end goal here for Greene? Why is she doing all this? Well, last week, NBC reported that she wants to be Trump's running mate in 2024. Former Trump aide Steve Bannon was quoted saying Marjorie sees herself on a short list to become Trump's VP. When I asked Greene about this last week, she didn't deny the report, but said she hasn't talked to Bannon about her VP aspirations and that she's focused on her committees at the moment. And tomorrow, the House Oversight Committee, which Greene sits on, has its first hearing of the new Congress to look at waste, fraud, and abuse with regard to pandemic spending. It's just one of the many things this committee plans to investigate here in 2023. Guys?
Thanks, Logan and Brennan.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signed an assault weapons ban into law on January 10th. This law accomplishes a goal that his administration has been working toward for the past 4 years and affects roughly 2.5 million Illinois residents. Politicat's Lance Wilhelm has more.
The Protect Illinois Communities Act bans the sale and distribution of many assault-style weapons and high-capacity magazines in the state of Illinois. It also requires that some currently owned firearms be registered with Illinois State Police and bans what are known as switches, attachments which are capable of turning handguns into fully automatic weapons. But the legislation comes with significant opposition, with some sheriffs even refusing to enforce the new restrictions. DuPage County Sheriff James Mendrick said, quote, I, among others, believe that House Bill 5471 is a clear violation of the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. There are now also multiple pending lawsuits on the federal, state, and county levels challenging the weapons ban. With financial help from the NRA, 2 Second Amendment attorneys who helped strike down New York's concealed carry law are now working to overturn Illinois' new ban in the Slato federal lawsuit. The lawsuit, filed on January 24th, claims the ban violates the Second and 14th Amendments because it prevents law-abiding citizens from using weapons for self-defense. So the suit reads, quote, almost no other state in the union has ever tried to adopt such an extreme measure, and for good reason, as no less an authority than the Supreme Court has already recognized that semi-automatic rifles traditionally have been widely accepted as lawful. Both sides are arguing the constitutionality of their position. Governor Pritzker saying, quote, we will keep fighting bill by bill, quote, vote by vote, and protest by protest to ensure that future generations only hear about massacres like Highland Park, Sandy Hook, and Uvalde in their textbooks. Back to Shravya and Jonas at the desk.
Thanks, Lance.
Coming up, we unpack Meta's decision to unban former President Trump from Facebook and take a look into an alderman's campaign for city council.
If you want to be a parent, it doesn't matter how you play, what you wear, how you dance, or even what direction life takes you. You just need to be there. You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care don't need perfection. They just need you.
Every day across America, excess food is gathered by a network of good people at local food banks, giving hope to millions of children who struggle with hunger. They've earned their wings, and you can too. Together, we can solve child hunger. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
Cook foods to the right temperature using a food thermometer. 3,000 Americans will die from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible, she must be a keeper.
Facebook's parent company Meta announced last Wednesday it would lift its suspension on former President Donald Trump's accounts. Politicat's Micah Sandy is here to discuss the decision.
Thanks, Shavia. Meta's decision to originally ban Trump was a precautionary decision following the January 6th insurrection and Twitter's ban against Trump from its platform. Among the social media platforms Trump was banned from are Shopify, Pinterest, Twitch, and Discord. Trump did not have Pinterest or Discord accounts, but he did have a Pinterest hashtag and a Discord server that acted as his fan base. These platforms wanted to avoid being a place for ideas related to Trump to circulate the way they did on Twitter when he tweeted about January 6th. For platforms where he was a user, the ban was primarily for his account. Trump currently has 23.4 million followers on Instagram. Before the announcement, his follower count was steadily declining. Data from Social Blade shows that his follower count has risen since Meta's announcement. He has gained over 50,000 followers within the past 30 days. At least some of the numbers that are part of the follower increase could have come after Meta's announcement. According to Meta, he will once again have access to both his Facebook and Instagram accounts in the coming weeks. The main question is whether or not he will use the accounts. Elon Musk lifted Trump's Twitter ban after becoming CEO, but Trump hasn't returned to the platform.
Thanks, Micah. A draft of the Supreme Court's opinion to overturn Roe v. Wade was leaked to the press in May. 6 of the 9 justices voted 7 weeks later to overrule past abortion cases in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. It is still unknown who leaked the draft. Politicat's Jeremy Fredericks is here to explain what a recent investigation has found.
Good evening, Shravia. When the leak was first reported, Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts announced there would be an investigation into who gave the documents to Politico. Supreme Court Marshal Gail Curley led the investigation, with former Secretary of Homeland Security Michael Chertoff. Yet Chertoff recently came under fire because the security and risk management group he founded and currently leads previously worked with the Supreme Court on security-related issues. CNN reporting on Friday that he received at least $1 million over that time. In its initial report, the Supreme Court did not acknowledge its relationship with him. The report included nearly 100 interviews with staff who signed affidavits, an estimated 80 of whom had direct access to that draft. The investigation established that some employees had discussed the draft with their spouses, and it was unlikely that the leak was a result of external hacking. However, the justices did not sign affidavits. Some are criticizing this decision, saying the justices are being treated differently than court employees. Curley said she spoke with all the justices and found no evidence linking them or their spouses to the leak. Questions still remain about the security of the future Supreme Court decisions. In this term, the court is expected to hear cases on voting rights, elections, and affirmative action.
Jeremy, has Michael Chertoff responded to the allegations?
No, he has not, and neither has a spokesperson for him. He got about $1 million overall, according to CNN, and he did various work with the Supreme Court, including looking at how to protect the justices last summer.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Chicago's municipal elections are in under a month, but it's not just the mayor campaigns we're watching. Politica's Gabrielle Coriati introduces us to a candidate looking to unseat the incumbent in one local race.
Muiz Bouwani is a Chicago public school teacher who's never held political office, but now he's running for the city's 50th Ward Council seat.
There was something I was told growing up about Chicago, right? I was told by my teachers to imagine a Chicago that loved and cared for every single person.
In his office, campaign materials in 5 languages, reflecting the community's diversity.
And then you might need some Spanish there too.
Whether we're from, the South Asian community, whether we're from the Jewish community, the Somali community, everyone belongs here.
Bouwani grew up in the 50th Ward's West Ridge neighborhood, the son of Pakistani immigrants. If elected, he'll be Chicago's first Muslim alderman.
My father has a 7th grade education, my mom has a 5th grade education. In the concept of probability, I don't think my story should be possible.
As a kid, Bouwani's family struggled to make rent, relying on the neighborhood for support.
They came through for us, whether it was providing a meal, they came through as whether it was giving my dad $50, like when we were short on rent.
And when some in his community asked him to run, his history stopped him from jumping into the race.
They asked me to run the first time, and I was like, no, because my own story is having access to healthcare, having stability, all just was really recent. I was 29 when I became a teacher, and I'm 35 now.
But one call from his mom changed his mind.
Pakistani moms, you can't talk to them like this. You gotta talk to them like this, even though you're not on speaker. So my mom, she set it on the table for me. She said, you love this place, but it also carried a lot of difficult memories of evictions, memories of just the overall instability and lack of accessibility to support. But for her, it was my responsibility now as someone who's been through these things that it became incumbent on me to take up the fight.
Running against incumbent Deborah Silverstein, who was first elected in 2011. Bouwani looking to be a fresh face. Silverstein's team says efforts to paint her as, quote, old school are unfair.
I'm out there doing community meetings and hearing what the people have to say. And I have a lot more that I want to do. This is the place where people go to, and you have to have that experience to know where to direct people and to how to solve problems.
While looking to unseat an incumbent, Bouwani's promises like increasing staffing and funding in public schools, expanding community safety resources outside of policing, and building more affordable housing has led to his endorsement by over 20 organizations. This includes the Chicago Teachers Union and Service Employees International Union. These endorsements and going door to door are how Bouwani's team hopes to spread his message.
That's what it's going to take, right? Is one by one, talking to people, entering into their lives and showing them this vision and articulating this vision and letting them enter into that as well.
And Bouwani says for his mother, the love in his campaign and the community is more than she could have imagined.
Seeing in this campaign that so many people that when she was growing up in Pakistan that she could never imagine from different cultures and spaces have a distinct connection to her story through her son, I think it means a lot.
From Chicago's 50th Ward, Gabrielle Coriati, Medill.
Thanks, Gabrielle. We'll keep you updated on Chicago's elections throughout February.
In partnership with Britain and the European Union, the U.S. imposed sanctions on Iran last week as a response to, quote, human rights violations. This marks the 9th round of U.S. sanctions related to Iran's oppression of protesters. Politicat's Ananya Chugh tells us more.
Thanks, Jonas. The U.S. Treasury announced heavy sanctions in a news release last week. They froze the assets of an IRGC cooperative foundation linked to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Corps. Other organizations facing asset freezes include the Iranian Special Police Forces, government institutions, and companies linked to cybersecurity and spyware. The crackdown on Iranian institutions comes amid the belief that the country remains unstable. A young protester, Mahsa Amini, died after being arrested for violating dress code in Tehran, sparking accusations of human rights abuses and starting an internal protest movement. The Iranian government has carried out public executions of protesters, in some cases leaving the bodies hanging from cranes. And now, the protest movement has gradually subsided. U.S. officials say Iran's continued human rights violations warrant a tough response from the international community.
Thanks, Ananya. And that's all the time we have for tonight on Politicat. For the Northwestern News Network, I'm Jonas Blum.
And I'm Shravya Pant. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Are we doing that now? No, this is different.
Can you see it? Do you want him to do like a